Peter, CEO of Ridgeline Minerals, RDG, on the TSX Venture. Chad, how are you today?
I'm doing good, thanks.
This is a really momentous occasion for Ridgeline. I followed the company. It's been 3.5 years now,
Yeah,
and this is an exciting year that we're just getting underway. I mean, you just closed
it
the
is.
financing. 4.1 million Canadian dollars. It's a little less than 3 million of our dollars, but
Yep.
it's a chunk of change. It'll get you somewhere. And a lot on the menu this year. So I want to delve into that. But
Yeah.
prior to delving into the different projects, I want to ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you about 2025?
I mean, compared to, the last 3 year, aside from going public in 2020, um, I'd say this is the most excited, let's call it a 9.5, that I've ever been about Ridgeline and its prospects, for 2025. Yeah, it's 5 years of hard work from our team is finally starting to come together, I think, in a really exciting year.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. It feels like you've laid the groundwork for a good outcome in 2025 and for years to come. It took some time to get here.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy. Some blood, sweat, and tears, and a lot of share price volatility, shall we say? But the
Yep.
stage is set for a big year. Let's get into the news. Go through like project by project. So the
Sure.
JV agreement with South 32. You have an MT survey that you just put out at the
Yeah.
Chinchilla Sulfide zone, and that is pretty exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Let me spin over to Selena here. So I'm going to show you a regional map. You can see my screen, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, so this is a regional map of all of our projects. I'm actually getting it updated right now. The only project that's not on here is our Atlas project, which I have in that blue circle right there, essentially. So that's a new project that'll get added to the map here this week. But you can see we have the two main gold trends, plus a really exciting porphyry trend that's coming together on the eastern side of the state where our Selena and Big Blue projects are. We have our two deals with Swift and Black Ridge with Nevada Gold Mines. That totals $40 million US, where they can earn up to 75% interest. Ridgeline retains a fully carried 25% interest to commercial production on both of those assets. At Selena, we inked a deal with South 32 last year in August. That is a $20 million earn-in for 80% equity in the project. And Ridgeline would retain a 20% non-dilutive debt facility all the way to first commercial production as well. So what we've tried to do across all of our deals is minimize that dilution that comes along, potential dilution that comes along with success, right? So you make a big discovery and you're a minority partner in any one of these deals. If you have to participate on a minority basis, you might have to come up with 10, 15, $20 million a year easily in the early stages of development with maybe a 5 or 10 year timeline on production, right? So it can be really difficult for a junior to participate and maintain a market cap that supports that kind of dilution. So we've instead taken smaller equity pieces of these deals on the back end, but we've solidified financing all the way to commercial production, which I think is the way to go. So that's a little background on all the assets, but why don't we step into Selena here? And do you want to just walk through kind of what we've done since inking the deal, I guess? Would that be the easiest way to?
Yeah, well, let's take a look at the Chinchilla Sulfide and the MT anomaly and why this is so
Yeah,
important.
no, absolutely. So a little bit of background. This is a project here in gold. That's our Selena play. We made the original Chinchilla oxide discovery in 2020. So this was outcropping silver and gold with lead and zinc credits at surface. We put about 10,000 meters into this project between 2019 and 2023. We were able to define a pretty cohesive zone that is easily, if we were to take it to resource, should exceed 100 million ounces of silver equivalent, heap leachable, shallow, the whole story, right? At the end of the day, though, that's not what the big potential of this project is. So when you look at the bigger picture, here's the Butte Valley Porphyry. This is owned by Freeport-McMoRan. That is the engine, the driver that is producing and pushing CRD rich fluids, silver, gold, lead, zinc, and copper out into the surrounding rocks. Chinchilla oxide would be the distal far out portion, kind of the last gasps of that porphyry system. So where we want to find the big prize, Chinchilla sulfide, is this red circle right there. It's directly in between kind of your bookends, right? The porphyry is the source, chinchilla oxide is the edges. So where's the big prize? And what our MT survey, which is over 400 stations, all through on 400-meter spacing, all the way across our main project area, that was completed to identify deep sulfides in the Chinchilla Sulfide area, right? We had a couple drill holes that actually showed some love back in 2022 that didn't get any love in the market, but showed, okay, this system continues. So for example, right where the number one is, we drilled 15 meters of 156 grams silver equivalent, including 3 meters of 40 grams silver, 7% lead zinc, and 3 grams gold in the same host rocks that host chinchilla oxide. We did not drill deep enough now based on what we know of the chinchilla or of the MT results, and that's what I'll get into right now. But we have evidence to show already that that system continues. It's right where it's supposed to be, and that got South 32 really excited. So what we're going to look at now is across a long section through this zone. Here's the historic silver and gold zone that we discovered in 2020. Like I said, we could take that to resource, but we just weren't getting the love from the market to support it. But when you look at we were drilling 2023, we drilled 61 meters of 175 grams silver equivalent. That's just gold and silver in there, right? So pretty exciting near surface. There is potential for that to go into, to turn into something down the road. But I think what you have to do is find that big sulfide zone first. And so I'm going to switch away. I'm actually updating Verify right now. So I'm going to switch to 2D sections. That'll show what our MT results actually came up with. But again, just remember, keep in mind, the porphyry right there and our target right here. And it's going to get pretty exciting when you look at the actual section. So here's what the plan view looks like. This is what MT contours. We just announced it yesterday. And what we saw is, unfortunately, in 2022, I mean, we drilled on either side of that MT anomaly, chasing at the time we were using our magnetic survey, which highlights different things than MT. So we were chasing what turned out to be the structures that bound the system. So we now know there's a fault zone that goes like this through there, another fault zone that goes like that through our sonic target. We drilled on either side of those faults, hit decent mineralization up to 3 meters of 600 grams silver, but the actual core of the zone sits right in the middle. So we're going to look at across a long section AA prime. Here's what that looks like now. And this is why anybody watching right now should be really fired up about the Selena project, because we've been pushing for 2 years now that we felt this was an incredible target right there, but we didn't have that data to support it, right? We're talking about 1,000, 1,500 meters down. These are deep, expensive holes to test a conceptual idea. So the MT is that last missing piece that has got our partners at South 32 incredibly excited about the potential here. And the reason being, you look at chinchilla oxide, you see a subtle MT anomaly that's directly related to over 10,000 meters of drilling, right? So we have a known signature of, let's call it 250 ohm meters to 1,000 ohm meters. Now, all you need to know about that is high ohm meters, 1,000 ohm meters is essentially, 2,000. That's your background unaltered limestone rock, right? All this area here, this dark blue, that's relatively unaltered rock, except for right at the chinchilla proper, where you see a slightly more conductive zone. That mineralization is oxide, which means the electrical current doesn't flow through oxide minerals the same way it flows through sulfide minerals. So if we have an oxide MT signature here, what the heck is that guy right there, right? That starts getting you going, okay, we know that the background levels of that rock all the way through here, that should be dark blue, right? If it was unaltered, that would be dark blue rock, nothing in it, nothing at all. So we have major thrust fault system that goes like this all the way across the project. And every time you got one fault where fluids have been flowing up and mineralizing the chinchilla oxide zone, right? You track that fault all the way back down the fault system, and you're right into the core of this anomaly. This anomaly is over 1.5 kilometers wide. It's widest. It's over 500 meters tall, and it's 2 kilometers long in the north-south. So the scale of this thing has exceeded anything that we expected when we set out to do this survey, right? We have our historic drill holes. I'm going to zoom in for you. There's our historic hole, right? It drilled right into the top of that system. we were still in mineralization, still in alteration when we were drilling this hole. It was RC, which means we weren't able to drill 1,000 meters down, right? The depth constraints of that rig was about 700, 750 meters. We took it as far as we could. We bottomed the hole in alteration in barbecue rock, saying, okay, you're still in system. Now that we have this CRD or the MT survey, we realized we were just on the edges of it, right? And what we needed to do, that hole needed to go all the way down 1,500 meters and fully test through that target zone. And based on, when you think of like the best analog that we have is the Taylor deposit in Arizona, right? So why not compare our project to the biggest CRD in the world? That's a good baseline to start with. So 32 has used MT really successfully at Taylor to expand and delineate the deeper sulfide mineralization that was originally discovered by Arizona Mining, right? These guys paid $2 billion for that project. They've continued to grow it. It's more than doubled in size since they bought it. And what's really interesting is their contours of their deposit show they have a thrust that looks just like that. And they have a 50 to 150 ohm meter anomaly that directly relates to their sulfide zone, right? You can overlay the two over top each other, and that's their deposit. It's 150 million tons. Well, you look at our project, and what gets me really excited is we have a 25 to 100 ohm meter anomaly, right? So our ground is even more conductive. It's showing, okay, there's even a higher response from whatever's down there, whether it's sulfides, whether it's alteration. We got to drill a hole to prove it. But we're seeing similar scale. We're seeing similar tenor of response from the MT to show that we could be on to a potentially world-class discovery here. And so I'm really excited. We're going to be fast tracking a drill program here for the summer. Probably going to start with 3 to 4 holes. And what they're going to look like is we're going to drill a hole right across that fault zone, drill through hole 37 and down into the core of the anomaly. Then if we're looking at a section, if we're looking straight down the core of the anomaly and looking this way, here's what section B prime looks like. So again, I want to show this from a different orientation so you can see just what the potential scale is. So not only is it 1.5 kilometers wide when you're looking northwest, now that we're looking the opposite direction, you can see that it's still 2 kilometers long and it's trending shallower as we head to the north. Again, key structural control. There's the projection of that same thrust fault right there. That MT anomaly is wrapping around that thrust fault. And that thrust wasn't modeled after we did the anomaly. That thrust has been there in our geologic model for 2 years, right? This is now you look at it and you go, okay, there's actually a significant anomaly here. Hole 37 drilled just into the edge of the anomaly. Hole 38 just above the anomaly, slightly less high grade, less extensive mineralization. It shows that we need to get a fence of holes all the way across. That's 6 holes. You could start with 3 holes, 1 hole off each one of those pads, right? And just see what you hit. You're starting at 1,500 meter holes to get to here. You're 1,000 meter holes by the time you get up to here. So pretty quick and relatively affordable test to potentially go after something that has, extensive scale. I'll go with that. I'm not going to say world class again, but it looks really
Section
good.
A.
This is, sorry?
Can you go back to
Yeah.
section A?
There you go. Yep.
Okay.
So we were looking this way, like we were looking to the north. If that's, if we looked our orientation, that section that we just looked at was looking that direction. You're turned around and looking at kind of the side view of the deposit or of the target instead of the front view.
So the MT survey is really good at identifying higher concentration of sulfides.
Correct. Yeah. So what it's doing is it's picking up conductivity contrast, and it has incredibly high resolution all the way down to 1.5 kilometers, 2 kilometers. So what it's picking up on is, all right, all of the surrounding dead limestone that's relatively unaltered, that's showing a very low conductivity. Electricity is not flowing easy and freely through that carbonate host rock. However, you get semi-massive to massive sulfides in a concentration, suddenly electricity wants to concentrate and flow through those areas, right? So think of like water flowing in a stream, right? It's going to take the path of least resistance. So you're going to see little trickles and branches coming off of that stream where it's easiest for that water to flow. It's no different with electricity, right? It's going to find the path of least resistance through the Earth's surface, and it's always going to look for those little pathways. In this case, it's a pretty darn big pathway, and it's sitting right there, and it's suggesting that you have a concentration of, could be alteration, much more likely that it's some form of a sulfide zone. To see that level of response, typically it's representative of disseminated to semi-massive to massive sulfide.
So there's a concentration of chalcopyrite or sphalerite there.
Yeah.
You're going to see it light up in the MT as a more substantial sort of anomaly.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I look at this graphic, this section, and I notice some trends here, and I want to just point them out. So the Butte Valley Porphyry is there at depth. It's about 1,500 meters deep. And then you're getting a little shallower as you get into the Chinchilla Sulfide target. And then the Chinchilla, the oxide target is much shallower, but there's definitely a trend there. So something has, the fluids have come from the porphyry and they've been forced up to surface.
Exactly. And actually, one of the things that gets us excited is this thrust fabric that you see. This is a compressive fabric that all bleeds out. Where does it all pinch down into? It's bleeding out of this porphyry, right? So that porphyry is a direct, call it fluid engine. It's pushing out fluids at a huge, just thousands, millions and millions of gallons of fluids are pumping out of that porphyry as it cools, and they're flowing out along the path of least resistance. And these thrust faults are a primary fluid conduit for all of those fluids. And we actually see, we get, even 10, almost 7 kilometers away at our broken egg target, we're getting distal oxide gold mineralization. And that's how these systems behave. So if you have a porphyry, usually within 1 to 4 kilometers of the edge of that porphyry, you're going to have varying types of CRD mineralization. Around the edges of the porphyry itself, you're going to see skarn, right? So skarn, then you got a big porphyry or a CRD zone here. Then you're actually into transitional. Chinchilla oxide is kind of a transitional zone for us. It's silver and gold dominant, plus or minus lead and zinc. And the reason for that is because as fluids are moving and pushing out of that porphyry, both the temperature and the fluids, temperature and the pH of the fluids are changing dramatically. And so lead and zinc, those are high, and copper, they're high temperature minerals. They don't like to flow as far from that porphyry source as gold and silver, which can flow for up to 10 kilometers away from the porphyry and stay in suspension within fluids. So it's actually just purely chemistry that explains why we see a copper porphyry, then we see what we think will be a silver lead zinc plus or minus gold and copper zone here, to mostly silver and gold here, and to gold only at broken egg. We actually have the entire system laying on its side, right? The entire zonation pattern of that, except for the porphyry, is owned by us. There might be the potential for a couple 100,000 ounce open pit gold mine here. We think you can open pit the Chinchilla oxide zone and leach it. And then the idea is, hopefully the big prize is a sulfide CRD horizon, like what you'd see at, at the Taylor Mine down in Chinchilla Sulfide.
How important are the host rocks here? The favorability of the limestone.
They're critical, actually. Without the right host rock, you don't have a deposit, right? So CRDs in particular, they like dirty carbonates, right? So lots of fossils, reef material, debris flows. What you're looking for is a very permeable carbonate rocks that also are highly reactive. So you want iron-rich limestones are your best host. That's what we have from here to here. Then beneath that, we have 2 different horizons through the red zone, which are iron-rich dolomites, which again are good hosts for CRD deposits. So we have over 700 vertical meters from here to here of prospective host rocks, and those dip all the way down into the CRD target here. So without those, you're right, without the porphyry, without the structures to plummet, and without those right host rocks to host it, you don't have a deposit, and those fluids will just flow out into nothing and disappear.
So based upon what you're showing me and based upon what I know about this project,
Yeah,
all the evidence is screaming there's a CRD there, and it could be quite substantial. And also, I was at Barksdale a couple months ago, so I was down there at the Taylor deposit in Arizona. And this is a really good analogy because the Sunnyside porphyry is also like a 0.2% copper porphyry. It's not like a great deposit by itself, but it drove the silver, lead, zinc, and copper that has concentrated in some other areas.
No, exactly. And you know what? You will never have a CRD without a porphyry source. They are one and like without the porphyry, you will not get a CRD. Now, the difference is you can have a mediocre porphyry that creates a world-class CRD. So Taylor, like you said, Sunnyside may never get mined, right? It's deep, it's low grade, it's still a question mark, and hopefully the Barksdale guys have success, and I hope they answer that. But there's a world-class porphyry sitting right beside it, and so it's a great analogy. I think I've actually, let's see here. Oh, I don't have it on here. On our deck, I actually have a comparison. I've actually overlaid the Sunnyside and Taylor deposit over top of Butte Valley, and it actually
It's a
shows the
very close
comparison.
analogy. It's a
Yeah.
really good analogy.
Thanks. I'll try to pull it up. I don't know why I didn't
Yeah,
have
because I was staring at their model just a couple months ago. I was staring at it for a couple days and I see this and it's like, it's almost the same thing.
it. It's pretty close. Yeah. No,
Pretty
I'm excited.
close.
Yeah. I'll try to let me see if I can just while we're talking here, go ahead and keep talking and I'll see if I can pull up that quickly and show it because it is definitely worth showing since we're on the same.
So all the evidence that you're showing me is confirming my bias that this could be the next best thing in mining in the US, but obviously that needs to be confirmed through drilling. I do notice the depth though, Chad. So,
Yeah.
if the CRD, the core of it is over 1,000 meters deep, how high does the grade need to be for this to be economic?
That's a good question, you know. So, actually, it's again tying back to Taylor, beating a dead horse here, but that deposit is between 1,000 and 1,500 meters vertical beneath the surface. So, very similar depths. So the hurdles for grade and etc. are about the same, I'd say. Their average, I think they're about 150 million tons of about 80 grams per ton silver, roughly 5 to 7% lead zinc, a little bit of copper. I think maybe like 0.25% or 1.1% copper in the Taylor sulfide. So, what I think as far as a minimum threshold, in my opinion, I think you need to see this 3 meters of 605 grams per ton silver equivalent. I think that's about what you need to see from a grade perspective. Difference is we need to drill 30, 50 meters of that, right? I think that's what really gets this very exciting, allows you to do some bulk tonnage underground mining. So I think we've already, I think, proven that not only is there continuation of grade in hole 37, but you're also seeing, you can see my screen, by the way, it's still showing up, just making sure. Okay. Hole 37 shows, okay, systems there. We bottomed in mineralization. We're seeing the kind of grade that is required to turn this thing potentially into an economic zone. All we need to do is hit thicker intercepts. And I think once we drill into the core of this thing instead of on the margins, like we did with 37, I think we can deliver that. I mean, just for perspective, hole 45, for example, which is the same host rock horizon that we're looking to drill here at the sulfide target. I mean, that returned 33 meters of 300 grams silver equivalent, including 6 meters of 1,100 grams silver equivalent. And that breakdown is 6 meters of 480 silver, 18% lead zinc, and 0.1 gold. So, in this hole, we drilled the 3 meters and that was about 42 grams silver, but it was 7% lead zinc and 3 grams gold. So you're seeing obviously quite a bit of variation in metallurgy or mineralogy between hits and stuff. And I think that just takes more drilling to sort out. But, yeah, you need to hit pretty substantial grades at those steps to turn it into something.
Before we move to Big Blue, I just want to ask about the drilling here. So South 32 is paying for it. They have to spend 10 million to start to really earn into the project, and then
Yep.
they have to spend 20 million to get the full earn in. So I think South 32 actually looks pretty smart right now, but we'll see with the drilling. What's the time frame for the drilling, and how much are these holes going to cost?
Yeah, so right now we're going through budgeting right now. They're still digesting these results, but they're very excited. I just presented to them yesterday again, our team. We're probably looking at early Q3, either late June, early July. at the latest to get going on a drill program and be our plan. You're looking at in and around, I don't know, $600,000 US per hole minimum, just to drill it. Then on top of that, you have geology assays, all of your supporting costs, but about 600 grand just to drill the hole. So not a small amount of money.
Will you use a pre-collar with a diamond tail on these holes?
Yeah, we're gonna pre-collar right down to about here, directly above the zone. That gets through a lot of the really rough drilling conditions, and then we'll core tail out the bottom with about 5.5 inch diameter core.
Okay, great. All right, let's move to Big Blue.
Yeah,
There's a lot to get into. There's so much meat to chew on here. Not
yeah.
every company has so much going on.
Yeah,
Uh,
sometimes, that's a blessing and a curse sometimes. I mean, sometimes I wish that I just had a single story to tell, right? And you can get people excited about that. I think when you have part of the issue is you have so many assets, you need to be really clear about what the opportunities are at each. So hopefully we can get that across for you here at Big Blue. But we've picked up Big Blue because we were actually looking for another Selena at the time. What we ended up actually staking though at Big Blue was less so the Selena part of the system and more so the Butte Valley analog, right? We actually staked what we think is the porphyry source with potential for CRD on the margins. So our project here is highlighted with the yellow, past producing copper mine in the early 1900s, about 95,000 pounds of copper at 6%. That is obviously low tonnage. You're talking about guys with a pickaxe and a donkey out there. But that would be one of the highest grade operating mines in the world right now if it was operating today, right, from a copper perspective. So the grade's certainly there. The question is they're mining skarn at surface. Is there a porphyry source at depth? And that's what we've been proposing over the last year and a half. So we have two targets, Ohio and the Delker target. And just to give a little bit extra perspective, if these were the porphyries right here and here, well, then you're going to see a zonation pattern bleeding out from that porphyry that looks something like that again. And we're going to see transition of the system from porphyry to skarn to CRD, and then eventually distal silver and gold, right? Well, that's exactly what we see. Reyna Silver owns the project directly on trend here. So they have Medicine Springs, which is this project here. And they actually have an old silver lead zinc mine here called Golden Pipe, right? And that is actually the distal expression of the CRD. That is the equivalent, in our opinion, to something like chinchilla oxide. And so if we drill back towards our project, you're going to see a progressive change to more copper rich, more high temperature, all the way back to what we think is the porphyry source. So sorry to get a little nerdy on you there, but I'll show you a few things that get us excited about the project. So if you zoom in, we have old data we picked up from local prospectors, and it shows we got some magnetics here, kind of supports. Okay, you got the Ohio target, the Delker target right here. We did IP this year and the reason we did IP is that's the way to chase these deep buried porphyry systems, right? Hercules Silver and how now Hercules Metals used it really effectively to target a blind covered target back in 2023 that I don't think we need to introduce, right? Turned into a pretty significant copper discovery. We think we're onto something here very similar. The IP, here's a line right at the Skarn Hill mine, which is the southernmost mine on that trend. You have the old mine at surface right here. And now you got a really consistent 2 kilometer wide by 1.5 kilometers long chargeability high, which is representative or interpreted as disseminated sulfides within a porphyry system. That is at a high level, that is the best way to explain a cohesive chargeability high in a system like this. Now, if this was just a blind IP survey and we had no data to support it, it'd be like, well, it could be anything, right? It could be, alteration, could be just a weird blip in the geology. But the fact that you have a high-grade copper skarn mine sitting directly above it helps support that idea that, okay, this is actually the porphyry source. That 20 to 25 millivolts is the same intensity and tenor of the original discovery hole that was drilled into Hercules Metals. So they were drilling about a 25 millivolt anomaly. And so there's really great potential here. If you look at resistivity, you can see what that's showing is an inverse relationship. You're actually seeing concentrated fluid flow, whereas that's what would be explained by this resistivity high that is directly on this dike swarm. We have a known dike swarm of QFP, so feldspar porphyry type dike swarm that is mappable at surface and it's directly related to mineralization. You're seeing that resistivity high, which is representative of alteration, silica, skarn alteration, hopefully some mineralization as well. So it's, again, all circumstantial until we drill this thing. But what we're seeing is a very consistent relationship between the chargeability highs at depth, the resistivity highs bleeding up into the existing mines, and then known copper production at surface. So if we were to step back up to the Delker mine, which sits right behind this picture, here's the next IP line. And here's what that looks like. So this is the original IP lines that we did. We've since updated, but one thing to point out, note where this is and then where it changes when we go to the next slide. So this potassic core, or this chargeability, modest chargeability high, sits right beneath the Delker mine. We didn't have a wide enough IP line to capture what would be that continuation of that chargeability, right? So I'm going to switch now to a 2D section. Again, I'm updating these for this week for MIF, but we're going to look at the same section, but with expanded lines that we took in December. And here's what that looks like. So note that potassic core that I mentioned, that has now moved to directly underneath the mine, right? Now that we have more data, it's reconciled that and it sits right beneath it. Then you have a chargeability high sitting right here. Again, it's more subtle and it doesn't have to be, it's not like, the more, 40, 50, 60 millivolts does not mean necessarily that you're seeing increased mineralization, right? You actually want to, you'll see major deposits average anywhere from 8 to 10 millivolts to 40 to 60 millivolts, those big porphyry deposits, right? And that their response can vary greatly, right? And it's a factor of geology, the amount of sulfides in the system, etc. But what gets us really excited is you're still seeing, even a kilometer and a half to the north of Skarn Hill, you're still seeing that same consistent charge high right off the edge of the mine. You're seeing fluid flow bleeding into that mine itself with up to 15% copper that we've taken in rock chips. It's an incredibly high grade skarn system. And then when you look below that, again, the resistivity is showing an incredibly hot resistivity anomaly that, again, is pointing straight at that Delker mine. And you can see the fluid's actually bleeding out of that porphyry and bleeding up that structural dike swarm and into the mine itself. So we're really excited. We're actually moving a drill rig out there next Monday. First drill hole is going to be essentially this guy here, going to drill straight across the what we're interpreting as a potential potassic zone, right underneath the old Delker mine. It's going to cut across this structural corridor here and here where the dike swarm is hosted. And it's actually going to drill all the way down into the same host rocks that host the CRD at Selena. So it's kind of a two-pronged drill hole. Not only do we think we can drill high-grade copper skarn, we also think there might be potential for a high-grade proximal CRD right off the edge of that porphyry in the same host rocks as to the south. So pretty exciting. The next drill hole to the south, we're going to drill a porphyry hole as well, pure porphyry target. It'll be drilling south of this section, but just for context, it'd be something like that, just drilling right through the guts of it.
So I remember when you came out with the first survey, the first work with the IP at Big Blue, and the Ohio porphyry target was kind of prominent.
Yeah.
But based upon the work that you've done since, more lines with the IP, more interpretation, the Delker porphyry target is just really lighting up, and it just makes a lot of sense with that dike swarm that is rooted into the chargeability high.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's a big anomaly there at depth.
Yeah, it's over 2 kilometers long in this direction. It's essentially, to be honest, this shadowy section right here, that represents, in the magnetics, that's essentially the extension of that Delker porphyry right there. So it shows up well in the mag. I wouldn't say that we're not excited about exploring Ohio. The difference is Ohio's about 600 meters to target. That's deep, right? Like if we hit something there, it's going to have to be, 1%
So
plus.
Delker, you can get into the system in theory in 200 meters, or you start to get into the system.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. So we can kind of start in the, we'll hopefully, I believe we can prove that this kind of 200-meter wide dike corridor is going to host a skarn copper skarn, right? So you're into mineralization at surface. Our first drill hole will hopefully be dropping into that structural corridor within 50 to 75 meters. So it's shallow. We would then track mineralization ideally, if we're right, down into the actual porphyry target itself. So it makes it a lot more of an approachable target, I think, to start. And then if we have success, we'd absolutely continue exploration over at Ohio as well. But we need a bit of a proof of concept here that yes, there is a porphyry, it is mineralized, and then that's kind of the catalyst for us to raise enough capital to go out and start aggressively drilling this thing across both targets. But we think our highest chance of success right out the gate is over at Delker.
Tell us about the host rocks at Big Blue.
Yeah. So pretty consistent with Selena. Our host rocks down here, starting with the brown, that is your Mississippian Devonian package that is hosted at Selena. So it's going to wrap up like this. We think the porphyry is intruding up into that and actually intruding into those host rocks. So there could be incredible potential for, proximal high-grade skarn mineralization on either sides of that porphyry, right? That would be kind of contact skarn, just like that Sunnyside, right? Right on the edge of that deposit, you have some pretty high-grade skarn right on the margins. And then above that is just a mix of Pennsylvanian to Permian age rocks. We see the same overlapping rocks at Selena. They are okay hosts. They're probably not as good as the Mississippian Devonian rocks, but still pretty good potential to host high-grade skarn up in the upper reaches.
So can you explain to the layperson
Yeah.
how the porphyry drives the fluids all the way up to the surface at Skarn Hill?
Yeah.
And that is able to generate copper grades above 20%.
Yeah. So think of it this way. So this is, again, I keep on saying, this is the engine or the fluid source, but, we're talking about, billions of metric tons of rock that are intruding up into these host rocks, right? And what's happening is as that porphyry, as it cools and turns into rock, because it starts as a liquid, right? A magma. As it cools, the rock starts to solidify, and what it does is it pushes fluid out of, think of like a sponge. If your sponge was the porphyry, and then you start squeezing that sponge, what's going to happen? You're going to see water flowing out of that. Well, in the case of a porphyry, that sponge is constantly getting contracted and expanded, contracted and expanded. And as that porphyry pumps in, it's acting like a sponge and it's pushing fluids out into the surrounding rocks. And what they do is that's how this dike swarm forms, because some of that fluid will also still have magma in it. And that's what forms the dikes. And what they do is they follow structural zones of structural weakness. So there's two big fault zones that kind of bound that dike swarm. That created the structural weakness so that when that porphyry was expanding, collapsing, expanding, collapsing, it pushed out dikes, it pushed out copper-rich fluid, and it concentrated them into those zones.
So the dikes are the conduit for the
Yes.
copper-bearing fluids.
Absolutely.
And it just so happens that at Skarn Hill, there must be like a confluence of these dikes that has made it so rich.
Exactly. And just to put it in perspective, like when you're talking about skarns can be incredibly high grade. They tend to concentrate, like for example, here's an underground picture of the Skarn Hill or of the Delker at it, right? So what they were doing is they were just chasing this incredibly high grade copper skarn right here. And so there's dikes all cutting through. Essentially, the dikes are just running along the roof of this of the adit here. And what they were mining was the contact skarn. So the fluids flow through the dikes and then they bleed out into the surrounding carbonates. And carbonates are very reactive. When you have heat, when you have fluid, it turns it into skarn. And so that's how you get that really concentrated high grade. Now you chase a 6% copper skarn down into the porphyry source. What are you going to find? Sometimes you might find a 2 or 3% copper porphyry. That's where, the best of the best, and you can go all the way down to that copper porphyry could be 0.2%. It could be 1%, 0.5% copper. You don't know until you drill it, right? But it tends to concentrate and enrich the surrounding skarn around it above the grades of what the actual porphyry source would be itself. So you make up for that with tonnage, right? So the porphyry.
Context. Thank you for that. I think that'll be helpful for a lot of people to really understand the Porphyry-Skarn relationship. So let's talk a little bit about this Big Blue drill program. Look,
Yep.
I know how it goes. Uh, you learn from each hole. You
Yep.
might add a hole. You might shut it down if you're seeing just dead rocks, which hopefully is not going to happen.
Yep.
Um, but what's the plan for the drill program at Big Blue right now?
Yep.
And what could cause you to expand the program?
You bet. So I'm going to go to a plan view to help. You know what? This isn't the right one, though. I don't like that picture on there. All right. So where we're going to start, when I was showing you that section, the Delker Mine sits right here. Skarn Hill is right here. We have a really nice porphyry target that actually is following essentially that dark spot in the magnetics. We are going to put a drill hole right about here, and we're going to drill back across that way, across that fault zone, right? So that structural corridor that I referenced, it looks like this, right? So it's heading northeast. We're going to drill across that with our first hole. We're hoping to hit high-grade copper skarn and drop into potential proximal high-grade CRD right beside the porphyry itself when we get to the bottom of the hole. Then we're going to step out right about here, right into the guts, kind of almost the center of that porphyry system, and we're going to drill almost a vertical hole slightly this direction. It'll just tap into the edges of that structural corridor at depth. And so the whole point is two-pronged. We want to show that there's high-grade copper skarn that might have bulk tonnage potential. Because again, remember, that structural corridor is over 250 meters wide from here to here, right? So you find we drill a whole bunch of high-grade copper skarn within the dike swarm. Even if it averages out to 0.5% or 1% copper, that could potentially be a mineable zone, right? Considering that it extends for 2 kilometers at surface. So that has potential there. The second point is proving, do we have an actual mineralized porphyry at depth that's feeding the whole thing? What's the grade? What's the size? Could this thing actually be potentially economic? And the bigger question too is, if we're correct about that, what about Ohio, right? For all we know, Ohio, like we suspect there's a big fault zone that runs right through here and another one that runs like this. So they run up the valley. And so when everything was ripping apart in Nevada, that potentially Ohio and Delker might have been all one piece, right? It's been torn apart. So we want to prove, okay, the porphyry is real. There's mineralization, there's copper. If we're right, hopefully it's a big success and we keep on drilling away at Delker, but we do not want to forget about Ohio. That might be, the other half of the missing piece of it, right? So the first approach is proof of concept, and we go from there.
So 2 holes, I'm assuming that's roughly 2,000 meters. I'm ballparking. Is that
Yep.
about
Nope,
one?
that's bang on. I budgeted for 2,000 meters at this point.
So what, 1.3 million or 1.4 million CAD?
Yeah, in that range. Yep. Yeah, I'd say I'm hoping to get it in for 1.2 if I can.
So obvious question. I know people are going to want to ask this. If you have success with the first holes, will you expand the program? And obviously that depends upon the quality of the results and financing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, it's completely dependent on how this goes. The other thing too is this isn't the only project that we're drilling, right? So I'll mention just briefly, right after we drill these 2 holes at Big Blue, we're heading over to our Atlas project. It's Carlin type gold, oxide at surface. That's this project right here. And we're really excited about this. And we wanted to make sure that, we believe really strongly in Big Blue. It's certainly our highest potential project that we have that are 100% owned, but we never want to just be all our eggs in one basket, right? So we're going to drill Atlas as well. The reason we're excited about Atlas is here's the Carlin trend to zoom in. You got the main northwest trending Carlin trend, and then there's these northeast faults that are key controls all the way across the trend. Well, one of those faults extends down this way, the same way that you see over at the Dark Star Emigrant District. No one's ever drilled this parallel trend at Atlas. It's the same host rocks as what our VPX Mike Harp made the initial discovery at Dark Star, which is this guy right here. And if you zoom in, his discovery hole at Dark Star was 126 meters of 4 grams per ton oxide gold, right? That took that stock from 100 million market cap to 800 million market cap in like 6 months. So the potential for this is huge. We're in, all-time highs in gold. We've staked this ground, including added this land position recently, filled out that block, but we have over three kilometers of continuous oxide gold at surface with high grades of up to 7.7 grams, 3.2 grams gold at surface oxide, right? So we think that we could be chasing like a dark star type analog, which is a multi-million ounce open pit oxide system that would be on the upper end of the grade curve in Nevada, and it would be, as a result, would end up on the lower end of a cost curve as well in a mining scenario. So very attractive target to mid tiers and majors, and we think it's a nice complement to Big Blue. And maybe the biggest difference here is when I have to drill 1,000 meter drill hole at Big Blue to test a concept. I mean, obviously the size of the prize at Big Blue is as big as it gets, right? You're going after a copper porphyry, but I can drill 6 holes for the same price as drilling one at Big Blue, right? What that I can drill at Atlas. So it's a nice kind of complement there. We'll come in, we'll drill 5 or 6 holes across this trend to start. If we're correct and we can drill anything that even comes remotely close to that kind of a gram meter intercept, it's
Please, Lord,
yeah,
please, Lord,
it's
drill a hole like that.
it's an absolute game changer for the company, right? And so this is right up Mike's wheelhouse. He's had incredible success in this exact style of deposit in the exact same rocks. The Dark Star deposit is just across the valley, right? 30 miles away. Everything's ripped apart, right? So we're really excited. We'll head to that. That'll be drilled in May once we finish Big Blue. So we'll put out results for Big Blue. We'll drill Atlas. We'll put out results from Atlas, and then we'll see where we're at, right? If in the, best case
32 is
scenario,
drilling at the Chinchilla Sulfide, right?
exactly, right? We start drilling at Chinchilla Sulfide in June. So we're going to see continuous exploration at our projects from March all the way through October, November, like drills turning at multiple projects. And just to put it in perspective, like we kind of talk, I think it'd be worthwhile when we talked about, how the business model is coming together. These are just a graph showing our 3 partner funded deals. We've put about $9 million into exploration across these projects to the point of getting them to a deal, right? Collectively. If these deals get fully executed by each of our partners, it's over 500% leverage on every dollar we've put into the ground. Plus, we keep these retained fully carried interests all the way to production on each one, right? So last year we saw, 2024, we saw $4 million spent across our projects. 2025, based on what we're seeing from all of our partners, we're going to see $14 million being spent by our partners. So when you talk about, potential, for every dollar we raise as a company, obviously it's dilutive to raise cash when you're, trading at 15, 20 cents. We're seeing incredible leverage on every dollar that we raise and put in the ground. We're seeing multiples of that being spent by our partners with meaningful interests in each of these projects. So when we talked about, hey, it's taken 5 years to get here to this point, well, that's a good example of it right there, right? We've gone from $4 million to 13, $14 million in a single year. And it's because our partners are really excited about these projects. They think that they can make meaningful discoveries at each one of them. So I'm really excited. I think we're heading into a really big year for the company, and I hope to deliver 100% owned discoveries at Big Blue, Atlas, or both. But we also have another 3 drill programs being drilled by our partners on far more advanced projects at both Selena and Swift. That could really be exciting for us.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about Swift, but first I wanna go back to Big Blue briefly.
Sure.
And the big dot V hole in October 2023, that was 185 meters of 0.84% copper. Now that got Barrick Gold to cut a $23 million check and also buy
Yep.
stock on the open market, which is something we very rarely see in junior mining. If you were to drill 185 meters of 0.84% copper at Big Blue, do you
Yeah.
think you would get a similar sort of outcome?
I think that I honestly think that that was a bit of a frothy, somewhat of an overreaction to, I think the timing was perfect. The market was starved for discoveries. There'd been no new stories going on. And I just think that hit a perfect time in the market where there was a lot of people hungry to get into something. I think that realistically, you drill something like that, it should garner 100+ million market cap valuation. Would it get $400 million like that hole did? Probably not. I mean, that's pulled back to what I think is much more realistic expectations as for the stage of the project. And I mean, incredible potential there. I love that project. I love what the scout team's doing at Cuddy. But yeah, I think that was probably a little frothy. But I mean, still, we're trading at a 20-25 million market cap now. You deliver a hole like that, yeah, I think you should see a 3 to 5x in pretty short order.
With Atlas, I mean, you pointed out that whole 126 meters of almost 4 grams per ton in oxides
Yeah.
in gold, in near surface oxide gold. That's an exceptional intercept. At Atlas, like, what's the bar for you? I mean, if is 0.7 grams or 0.8 grams per ton gold over 100 meters a good result?
Yeah, that would, I mean, yeah, good result. That's a phenomenal result. I mean, that would be the most exciting oxide drill hole drilled in Nevada in the last 4 to 5 years, right? Just because, frankly, those kind of thicknesses and grades are hard to come by nowadays. They're just usually what you're seeing is 30, 40, 70 meters of zero point 0.5, zero point 0.6, zero point 0.8, right? You get something in the 100 plus meter range from surface, getting you into that 100 gram meter intercept. That would be one of the highest margin mining operations that you'll find anywhere in North America. So
So suddenly that's a game-changing hole for the company.
Absolutely. I think that a 100 plus gram meter hole should see a re-rate on our stock as well, right? I mean, maybe not quite as much torque as what you see from a brand new copper discovery. I mean, there's not much else that drives. You look at Amark, right? Their stock's been on an absolute tear on their copper discovery in BC. So, but yeah, no, I think that you would see a significant amount of excitement on that, and we have our partners at NGM are hungry for replacing their reserves, right? So they have what is looks like a high grade discovery coming together at our Swift project. That's a long term, something very long term. It takes 10, 15 years to get an underground mine in Nevada up and going. You find an oxide deposit in Nevada, the timeline to production is dramatically quicker. So that would be something that'd be very exciting to our partners, as well as, the Calibres, which are now no longer, I guess, don't exist anymore, but the Orlas, Caliber, McEwen Mining, groups like that would be incredibly excited to have an opportunity to go after a project. So we think it's something that you can generate a lot of excitement and news on very quick, and it's cheap to drill.
Yeah, you mentioned Swift, and Barrick highlighted Swift in their latest presentation. What's going to
Yeah.
happen at Swift in 2025?
Yeah, so let me pull out. Yeah, so we'll look at Swift. Swift is on the Cortez trend, and it's just on trend of about 50 million ounces of past producing and current reserves of mines that are all owned by Nevada Gold Mines. $30 million earn in to get to a total interest of 75% for them. And what I'm going to highlight here is the Swift project right here. NGM partnered with us on this in 2021. They've currently spent $10 million US through the end of 2024. They have to spend a total of 20 million US by the end of 2026, or Ridgeline gets 100% of the project back. If they spend that $20 million, they get 60% majority ownership. They then have to spend on a series of milestones and cash payments to get to a 75% interest fully. Uh, so the excitement on this project is that they just drilled 2.7 meters of 7 grams per ton gold in for the first time at the project. So this is the highest grade intercept they've ever drilled on a gram meter basis. It's still fairly thin, right? Like we need to get more of that thicker intercepts. But the important thing to take away, all the current reserves for underground mining in those deposits, the average grade is 7.3 grams per ton. Average grade of that intercept, 7 grams per ton. So we're hitting what Barrick considers ore grade material, right? Is it thick enough? No. We need to hit 10 meters of that, 20 meters of that. But we are right on the edge of what I think is a breakout discovery at Swift. Barrick is now mentioning it in all of their reports, like you mentioned. They're very excited. We're going to see a dramatically expanded drill program this year. So I'm still getting final numbers, getting confirmation. We'll get a press release out as soon as those numbers are complete. But we spent 3 million last year. We're going to see easily a double or more in spending this year on the project. So they've also hit up to 10 grams per ton in a narrow interval within that. And again, just to point out, 4 Mile, which is a tier one discovery that they've been touting as their next big thing, that's wholly owned by Barrick, but it will get folded into Nevada Gold Mine shortly. The average grade of that resource is 10.1 grams. So again, we're hitting both of the marks for them. On our high grade, we're hitting 10.4 grams. On our low grade, we're hitting their reserve grade. So that's why they're excited. The trend itself, I think something to point out, every time you get these cross-cutting faults, you end up with a 10 to 20 million ounce gold complex. The next set of cross-cutting faults is right on our project. So you can see structurally, these systems have been hopping and they're getting wider and wider apart the farther northwest they go. It's because Nevada was pulling apart at the time, right? So these two deposits, they're only like 4 kilometers apart. Then you're 7, then you're 8, right? It's just part of the whole rip apart. But you need to be in that structural corridor. That's where we're having a lot of success, is right off the margin of that right now. And I think we're going to hopefully be drilling a lot more holes this year to just show that this thing can get a heck of a lot bigger. But yeah, I mean, this is a very quiet project for us that, to be honest, the markets I think are completely discounting. This has one of our highest chances of being a material discovery in 2025, just based on all the drilling that's been done and the amount of drilling we expect to see happen this year.
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation that the market is sort of asleep on these. You know, they need to be hit over the head with a drill intercept.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a good point. The 10.1 grams per ton was drilled at Swift. Now we just need to see like 10 meters or 20 meters of that, and it will
Yep.
be game on in a very big way. So, Chad,
Yep.
this has been a lengthy conversation. I want to
Sure.
let you get on with the rest of your day. But final two questions. What keeps you up at night?
Well, up until 2 weeks ago, it was access to capital. So, question one, sleeping a little better, getting that 4 million in the bank is been a big thing for us. I think really what keeps me up at night is I've had a lot of really good shareholders, yourself included, who've believed in what we're doing for a long time, right? They've seen the model, they recognize that, our team just wants to make discoveries and find new deposits. And so we've had a lot of people backing us for a long time. I want to make those folks some money, right? I want to make you some money. I want to make me some money. That's the reason we're all here. That's really what keeps me up right now. I want to deliver multiple discoveries in 2025 to our shareholders, start monetizing these assets, start returning capital back to the folks that have been backing me for a long time. So that's probably, financing is complete. We've had we got some money in the bank. Now it's time to actually turn something around and do something with it.
Big.
Yeah.
Peters, drilling beginning at Big Blue very soon. Thanks for your time.
You bet, buddy. Thanks.